This is Laura London, and you're listening to a special quarantine edition of Speaking of Jung. I started this new series in the spring of 2020 during the coronavirus lockdown when I decided to spend my extra time at home interviewing some of my friends about the interesting work that they do. Joining us today for the 6th edition in this series are Geshe Damchoe Gyaltsen at the Drepung Loseling Monastery in South India and Morika Hensley in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Damchoe Gyaltsen is a Geshe Lharampa, the equivalent of a Ph.D. in the Gelugpa tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. He attended Drepung Loseling Monastic University at the Drepung Loseling Monastery in South India, where he has been residing since, is it 1986, Geshe-la?
Since 1983.
Okay, so residing since 1983. Currently, Geshe Damchoe serves as at the monastery as a senior teacher of Buddhist philosophy and held the title of disciplinarian in 2016. Drepung Loseling is considered one of the 3 great monasteries and the home monastery of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. Originally established near Lhasa, Tibet in 1416, it once housed over 10,000 monks. After being forced to leave Tibet in 1959 and come to India as exiles, its monks re-established the college in South India. This monastery is part of the Gelugpa sect of Tibetan Buddhism, its largest and most important school of thought. It's headed by the Dalai Lama, whose teachings are considered to be the purest form of Tibetan Buddhism. In 1998, Drepung Loseling and its North American seat in Atlanta, Georgia, established an academic affiliation with Emory-University to promote cultural understanding and scholarly interchange. This historic affiliation between 2 major institutions of learning was inaugurated by His Holiness the Dalai Lama on May 12, 1998. In addition to its academic and spiritual programs, Drepung Loseling is committed to helping preserve the endangered Tibetan culture, which today leads a fragile existence in the exiled refugee communities in India and Nepal. In conjunction with Richard Gere Productions, it coordinates the Mystical Arts of Tibet World Tours, that's where I met Geshe Damchoe, and oversees the Drepung Loseling Educational Fund, a sponsorship program for the adoption of monks in training at Drepung Loseling Monastery. Morika Hensley is a 3rd-generation New Mexican who grew up with horses, dogs, cats, soccer balls, and lots of art in the dirt of Santa Fe and Taos. She is a lifelong lover of wild beings, sacred landscapes, and terrible puns, devoted to discovering and embodying a path of place-based eco-cultural stewardship. She earned a master's degree in environmental sciences with a concentration in ecology and conservation from Emory-University, focusing on human-wildlife conflict in Ladakh, India, where she spent a year as a Fulbright researcher at the Snow Leopard Conservancy India Trust. And for 3 summers, she was the Emory Program Assistant for the Tibet Mind-Body Sciences Summer Abroad. She has a background in Tibetan studies, community conservation, and religion and ecology. Morika is the recipient of a Fulbright Nehru Student Research Grant, Santa Fe Community Foundation Michael Currier Scholarship, and Los Alamos National Laboratory Foundation Senator Pete Dominici Scholarship. She is currently the program coordinator for the Santa Fe Watershed Association, an environmental conservation organization, and is involved in the ecological restoration of Santa Fe County, exploring place-based ecocultural stewardship and radical humility. This interview is being recorded on Wednesday, July 1st, 2020, through the magic of Skype. Boy, that was a lot. Are you guys still with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Welcome,
Yes, yeah.
and thank you for being here.
Okay, my pleasure. Yeah, it's my
Thank you
pleasure.
both so much.
Thank you for having be part of this.
Yeah, well, Geshe
Yeah.
Damchoe and I are used to seeing each other on Skype every week or so, sometimes every day, every week. And I met Geshe Damchoe when he was on the Mystical Arts of Tibet tour in the United States in 2011. And Morika, I think I met you the year after at the Mabel Dodge Lewin House in 2012. When there was another group there. It wasn't Geshe Damchoe's group, it was a different group. So where should we begin? Morika, how did you get involved with the monks?
It's always a wonderful story to tell.
Yeah.
And let me just add, you two also know each other. So the three of us have all met.
So,
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah.
And Geshe Damchoe's been to my home and been to Morika's home. So I'll stay back and let you guys tell us the story.
Well, I'll make mine quick so that Geshe-la can elaborate. But I was lucky enough to meet the first group of Mystical Arts of Tibet monks when I was 10 years old in 2004. It was kind of a coincidence. A friend of my mom's had a friend who was offering the monks dinner after they had blessed the school that she was a principal of. And so we just kind of were able to tag along to this dinner. And of course, later I learned that the monks are touring and they're sharing their knowledge and their experience of Tibetan Buddhism and Tibetan culture, and they're trying to raise awareness. And one of the many ways that people can support them on the road is by offering them a meal or inviting them to bless their homes and businesses and things like that. But that evening, my mom and I just happened to tag along to this dinner, and we happened to sit next to the translator of that group. So we were able to have a pretty in-depth conversation about Tibet and Buddhism. And I had never really known anything about Tibet. I had heard about it. And of course I had heard about His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. So it was a surreal and special experience to get to talk with this very knowledgeable and wonderful monk. And I was at a Montessori school at the time. I think I was in 4th grade. And so I called up the director of the school and asked if I could bring the monks to the school the next day, because they were leaving the day after that. And the monks kindly agreed, and the director of my school kindly agreed to invite the monks to come. And so they came to my school and they did some chanting and they talked more about Tibet. And then the thing that really got me hooked on being friends with the monks for a very long time was that after the blessings and after the conversations, they came out on the playground and they started playing basketball with all the kids and Gaga and all of these other games. And they were so joyful and playful. And of course, we had also just seen them being so spiritual and knowledgeable and profound. And so I think for a 10-year-old me, that was a very important teaching and lesson, and something that was very inspiring to me, that one person could be both so committed to their austere, in some ways, spiritual practices, but being a very serious scholar and spiritual practitioner and a very compassionate person, but also how important humor and playfulness was to them. That really stuck with me and my mom as well. And so that was kind of the moment that started this years-long friendship now and really shifted the course of my life, honestly. And so it was from that moment that we became involved with every group of monks, including Geshe Damchoe's group that came to Santa Fe. And it was through the Drepung monks that I became interested in attending Emory University for college and going to India on the Emory Study Abroad program. And so I was sort of able to dive more deeply into learning all about Tibet. And so I feel really lucky for that. And it's always amazing to look back on that because it does seem like such a random event that happened. But my whole life has really been shaped by that, including Geshe-la's presence in my life. So I'm very grateful.
Yes, that's wonderful. And Geshe-la, are you still there?
Yes, madam.
What is
I'm
your,
here,
so you were here in the United States for 2 years. Back then, the two groups of monks would come for 2 years at a time and tour really North America, the United States, and I think Canada and Mexico, and then go back, and another group of monks would come. I think now they're doing it for 1 year at a time. And of course, since the coronavirus, things are very different, and we'll get into that later. But Geshe Damchoe, would you tell us about I don't even know where to begin. Tell us about your time in the United States, but then I want to go back and hear about how you became a monk. So what was your tour like, your visit to the U.S. and what you did here?
Okay. I was in United States in 2010 and 2011.
Right.
For 2 years. My main responsibility was I gave some different types of Buddhist philosophy, different types of lectures,
Yes.
There's many different university, different status. So also I shared my Tibetan traditionally different chantings, different prayers.
Chantings and prayers, yeah.
Yeah, prayers. Also, we created many different sand mandalas,
Sand mandalas,
as you know.
Right.
Sand mandalas, yeah. Those things, what I did at that time. Also, I got very important different experience from Western people. So because they are quite different Tibetan culture and Western culture, they are, quite different. There are many different,
Yeah.
So I learned, so how to communicate each other, and how to talk each other,
right.
Western people and Tibetan people, how to contact between naturally each other. Also, I met many people, very wonderful people, like Morika's mom, Teresa, and some people wasn't with us now, passed away, like Marsha.
Marsha Keegan, yes.
Yeah, Marsha Keegan. I remember her, she very well,
Yes.
So I stayed in many different families' houses, like in Santa Fe and Taos and in California, New York City, any other different places. So before my tour, I couldn't talk each other very,
in English.
Outside. In English, or, I couldn't share very openly, So eventually I has been quite open. My mind is quite open, So that's brought for me to improving my daily practice of compassion, loving kindness, and altruism practice, so on. So I thought, it's just, if you would like to improve your daily practice of compassion, loving kindness, we should meet many different peoples, different backgrounds, like different religions. I met many Christian, some Christianity people, also Jewish people. I went many different types of churches and synagogue,
Different churches and synagogues, yes.
Yeah, different churches and synagogues. So I got many new experience, from those things. So I think I was lucky, I got those very good experience from Western people. After tour of United States, we went to South Korea for 1 month. Also, I met wonderful people in South Korea, communities, many families. Also, I had some experience, Korean, their different, their own cultures, traditions. Yes. So, I got those things. So I feel like I was very lucky, I went to the tour,
That you were on the tour. And so it was really a two-way street. Not only were you traveling, teaching us, but you were learning from us as well. And something really stood out to me about what you just said about compassion and developing compassion through interacting and meeting and learning from people who are different backgrounds, different cultures, different religions. Yes. And I love that. Yes. I love having friends who think differently than I do, believe differently. And I get so much from that. And that is, I don't know, Morika, do you want to jump in there and say anything about that?
Well, it definitely, I heard that and smiled as well. Mm-hmm. I definitely feel similarly. And I, like Geshe-la, I guess I both feel very grateful to, and you as well, Laura, I feel grateful to have friends and people in my life who are different and have different experiences and know differently than I do. Mm-hmm. And it really helps to open my mind and practice compassion. And I know that I think part of why it's especially profound when Geshe-la says it is that we know that he really lives it, and that helps the rest of us to live it as well. So that's something I'm grateful for Geshe-la to be in my life as well.
Right. And he mentioned your mother, Teresa Vorenberg, who is a friend of mine. She is such a lovely person, and she is a goldsmith. She's had a gallery on Canyon Road in Santa Fe, which I highly recommend if anybody is in Santa Fe, visit Santa Fe, that you look for Teresa Vorenberg Goldsmiths. And I will put a link to her gallery in the show notes for this episode on the website, speakingofjung.com. And Teresa was very actively involved in the monks' time in Santa Fe, as was Marsha Keegan. She passed away in 2016, and I wanted both of you, to talk a little bit about her, because she and her husband, Harmon, is it Houghton?
I think
Houghton. Harmon Houghton. Marsha was a photojournalist who's written many, many books, and she's traveled to Tibet, and the book that she was working on before she died was published a couple months after she passed away, about the similarities between the Tibetans and the Native Americans of the Southwest. And We can talk about that later. I'm actually going to ask Harmon if he would come on and do an episode with me about it. But I think Marsha and Harmon were instrumental in bringing the Dalai Lama to the United States originally. Is that true? Do either of you know?
Yes.
I'm not.
I think Morika knows better than me. I think I heard about that.
You heard about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Marsha showed me, some pictures of His Holiness first visiting in United States. So she showed me some pictures, Mm-hmm. Also, she mentioned about that, and I guess it was in 1978 or maybe 9. I'm not sure exactly year. I think maybe Morika knows about that. So I believe that she did. First, His Holiness brought in the United States. Yeah, I think she did good things. Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm not sure if she was the one who brought His Holiness, or if I'm not sure that. I think Harmon will be the best person to ask. But I know that Marsha often spoke about how she and Harmon were His Holiness's first security guards in America.
Right. That's right.
And so she said I think they met in New York City, and at that time, His Holiness was not a well-known global celebrity. And so they just drove him around in their car in New York City, and they got to be friends. And Harmon will have some amazing stories. And so then I think that for sure was a connection. So I'm not sure if they had something to do with bringing His Holiness, or if they had more to do with kind of protecting him and coordinating his schedule once he was in America. But somehow, Marsha was from Oklahoma, and then she came to New Mexico for college, actually, first, I think. And so she was the one who kind of established that connection between Tibet and the southwestern U.S., and particularly the Hopi. She organized a meeting between the Hopi elders and His Holiness very early on. I think in the 70s, like Geshe-la said. So it was from that time that Tibet has been connected
and
more intimately.
More intimately, right. And then how did the mystical arts of Tibet tour begin? How did it form? And this was, I think, in the 1990s, right? Do either of you know?
It is, first tour began, it was around 86, I think.
1986, okay.
Yeah, because we started to build a new prayer hall at that time, because in 1985, His Holiness Dalai Lama gave a classical teaching in Bodhgaya in Bihar. So I think Bodhgaya, Morika knows very well. So at that time, many monks came from Tibet to receive the classical teachings. Then also they would like to join different monasteries like Drepung Monastery and Keegan, Sarah, so on. At that time, I guess more than 300 monks came through in Drepung Loseling Monastery, new monk. So
let me just clarify, in South India.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Before they came through in Bodhgaya to receive classical teaching. After that, they joined in Drepung Loseling Monastery. So we didn't have capacity to gather, in the prayer hall. It was very small.
Oh, okay.
Then we started to build a new prayer hall. That's why we didn't enough spend of money. Then somebody, senior monks and some abbot with the senior monks, they discussed how to do. Then, there's a Rinpoche. He was a Tibet house, director of Tibet house in New Delhi. He knows Glenn Mullen. It's
Glenn Mullen, yes.
Glenn Mullen, yeah. Both of you know, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Rinpoche and Glenn Mullen already, they know each other. So then Rinpoche brought Glenn Mullen in New Delhi. Then Loseling officers, some Loseling officers went to there. They had a meeting for the start tour. So then they decided to go.
Okay.
Yeah, started a tour. At that time, Glenn Mullen was main guide, main guide,
Right.
and Geshe Lharampa was first translator in the group, in the tour.
Geshe Lobsang Tenzin, who is now the head of the Drepung Loseling
Yes.
Monastery in Atlanta, the North American
Yes.
seat, and he's also a professor at Emory University. Is that right, Morika?
It is. Yep. And
Yes.
and he's the director of the Mystical Arts of Tibet tour now as well.
So
He wears a lot of hats.
He wears a lot of
Yes.
hats. And so he was a monk at the Drepung Loseling Monastery in South India. He became involved with the creation of the tour. He was part of the first group to come to the United States and served as the translator. And then eventually he decided to stay in the U.S. and start the Drepung Loseling Institute in Atlanta. He disrobed and married, and he's also a professor. So, Geshe-la, would you tell us how the educational system works at the monastery? So not only is Drepung Loseling a monastery, it's also a monastic university. And when I was reading your intro, I mentioned that your title is Geshe Lharampa. And that is equivalent, if we had to equate it to something, to a Ph.D. But it takes a total of 24 years of study. Is that true?
I studied about 20 years.
20 years.
For 20 years, Buddhist philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
In Drepung Loseling Monastery, I have been study about 14 years. 14 years. After that, I joined to take exam, Gelugpa University for 6 years.
Where is that? Gelugpa University.
Gelugpa University head office is it was in Blackwood. It's nearby Sarah Monastery. Ganden and Sarah and Drepung and another some monasteries like Ratu or Tashilumbo. Those, after graduation of their own monastery, then we had to join to take examination from Gelugpa University.
Okay, and so they're all
to be a Geshe Lharampa
to be a Geshe Lharampa. So all of those universities that you mentioned, those are all located in the same general area of South India. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you had to go there for a year for additional teachings. And what was it that was taught there? Are you allowed to tell us that you couldn't learn at where you were?
Yeah, we after graduation of Drepung Loseling education, then we had to learn higher some deeper level Buddhist philosophy, which is in Indian master's commentary, like Nagarjuna's commentary and Asanga's commentary.
Commentary, okay.
Yeah, Chandakirti's commentary. We basically, topics is not much different, same, but we had to learn more deeper,
deeper level.
Deeper.
Okay.
So that's where we had to learn deeper level philosophy after graduation of Drepung Loseling education. So when we joined in Gelugpa University, we just had to take examination.
Okay.
During study, we had to stay there. We own monastery, From Drepung Loseling Monastery, we can stay in Drepung. Sera Monastery, who would like to join to examine in Gelugpa University, they had to study in their own monastery. We don't have there is a very big university, Gelugpa University, We have only head of Gelugpa University examination, board of examination.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you finally you got this degree, and not all of the monks obtain this high degree. Is that correct?
Yes, madam. Yeah.
And
it is quite it's difficult to to get Geshe Lharampa degree. So it is a topic is very heavy. It's very deep. So we had to use we had to learn those topics with the logician. Many different reasons. Logician, logic. Dharmakirti's logic, Tingna Hans logic, so on. There's some, particularly some logic commentary, so we had to learn those things.
And debate is a very large part of your training, right? You debate each other. The monks debate each other, and it's a very physical activity.
Yes, madam. We do debate to learn Buddhist philosophy, because when we meditate, on emptiness, on permanent, on recognition, so on, we had to use many different types of reasons, not only to remain, our mind to remain on only one single object. We had to use many different types of reasons to meditate. There were two different types of meditation, analytical meditation and placement meditation. We called shamatha. Shamatha, Sanskrit word is shamatha meditation. It is single-pointed mind meditation. Another one we called mindfulness. Tibetan word is Hakthong. Hakthong, I think it's a word, Sanskrit word. Maybe Morika, can you remember?
Is it calm abiding, Geshe-la? I'm not sure.
Calm abiding. Yeah, it
calm
is a shini,
abiding.
Right?
Yeah,
calm abiding shini.
Yeah, but
yeah,
mindfulness,
shini.
I think also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is called. It's fun. I can't remember Sanskrit word. Anyway, there are two different types of meditation. We Gelugpa traditionally meditation. We recognize analytical meditation is very important to train our mind.
To train
to
your
reduce,
mind.
Yeah, to reduce anger, ego, jealousy, attachment, misconception. Mind, so on. We need many different types of reasons. Those we have to get from debate, each other.
From debating each other. Debate.
Yeah, so debate. So I think in Gelugpa tradition, debate is very, very important to learn Buddhist philosophy.
Okay, and so we mentioned Gelugpa several times, and I'd like for you to explain to the listeners who might not be aware about the different kind of sects within Tibetan Buddhism. There are 4 different schools, right?
Yes.
And would you tell us
Yes,
what
ma'am.
those are?
Yeah, first is Nyingma tradition. Nyingma tradition, it was began in 8th century, beginning of 8th century. King Chisong Detsen invited a Nalinda scholar. His name was Shanti Rakshita. King Chisong Detsen, he invited Nalinda master, who was Shanti Rakshita. He brought Nalinda traditional philosophy. He brought in Tibet, So since that, Nyingma tradition start in 8th century. Eventually, then comes Sakyaba tradition. After that, Kagyupa tradition. After that, 14th century. In 14th century, Gelugpa came to in 14th century.
It came to Tibet from
Lama Tsongkhapa.
India.
Lama Tsongkhapa.
Okay.
Founder was Lama Tsongkhapa. His name was Lama Tsongkhapa. Yeah.
Okay. And Morika, you studied Buddhism at Emory, is that right?
A little bit, yeah. I more studied Tibetan language and culture, history.
Okay. So it's the Tibetan Studies at Emory University, which is in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what were the classes that you took there? You said Tibetan language and Tibetan culture?
Yeah. I took several years of Tibetan language, and there were a few other kind of specialty classes, one like Tibetan film or films about Tibet. And then I was able to study abroad in India for a program that actually doesn't exist at Emory anymore, but it was the Spring Tibetan Studies program, which emphasized culture and religion and philosophy. So in India, where we studied at the Sara College of Tibetan Studies in just below Dharamsala, but it's affiliated with the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics in Dharamsala. And so there I was able to take one kind of semester of Buddhist philosophy and more language and culture history, things like that.
And you said that that's outside of Dharamsala, so that's in northern India, as opposed to where Geshe-la is in South India. And Dharamsala, a lot of people may have heard of because that is the actual home where the Dalai Lama resides, way up north in the mountains. And so you were a student at Emory University, and why does Emory have a Tibetan culture program? It's kind of unusual, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It really is primarily because of Geshe Lobsang Tenzin Negi, who's the director and founder of the Drepung Loseling Center in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. He's, runs the Mystical Arts of Tibet tour, and he studied at Emory University for his Ph.D. Shortly after he first came to America on the Mystical Arts of Tibet tour. And so he's really the reason that Emory has this connection, and he's sort of the doer of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So, or one of them, I should say. So it was really at His Holiness's wishes that Geshe Lobsang La should study at Emory, and there were a few professors that were very supportive of him and of Tibet, and so it was then through him that His Holiness the Dalai Lama became an honorary distinguished professor at Emory, and of course, as time went on and continues to go on, having that connection with Emory and having the Drepung monks sort of headquartered in Atlanta has attracted more Tibetans to settle in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And so as the Tibetan community grows and more Tibetans study there, of course, there are more Tibetan scholars and collaborators and contributors to the visions of His Holiness that Geshe-la that Geshe Lobsang kind of works towards and manifests. And so there's kind of a combination of features there. There are some professors outside the Tibetan community that had experience in India or in Tibet working with the Tibetan community or researching Tibetan Buddhism and things like that. But actually also at Emory, there kind of became this bridge with science and science professors. And so that has then provided kind of this whole other branch for the expansion of, I guess, the relationship that Emory has with the Tibetan community in some way. So it's not confined to students at Emory who are studying Tibetan related subjects. In fact, actually that number is fairly low still, or it might have even been higher in the past, but there are Tibetan students who have special, I think there's a special scholarship for Tibetan students to study at Emory. And so there is kind of this broader scholarly relationship between the Tibetan community and Emory that includes, but is not limited to the actual Tibetan studies subjects.
Mm-hmm. And Geshe Damchoe, you were telling me about a new science center at the monastery where you are that was inaugurated in 2017, and His Holiness was there. Would you tell us about that? And Morika, were you there for that?
I was not there for that, but I have been to the center.
Geshe-la, what is this Drepung Loseling Meditation and Science Center?
Yeah, we built a new, a very big building, as Morika knows. She knows. Yeah, it is for the universal learning meditation and Tibetan culture, Tibetan tradition. Who would like to learn? You can join that center. There are very good rooms and everything is there. We prepared for who would like to join, who would like to learn Buddhist philosophy, meditation, Tibetan culture. So main thing one ambition is that for the outside people who would like to join to us, we opened that building. Also, Tibetan Buddhist, Tibetan monks had to learn modern science.
They have to learn modern science.
Modern science. It was. First it was started by His Holiness Dalai Lama give advice, Then we started that program for monks to learn science. So we had to continue modern science, So we need a specific center for the learning science because we had to invite many professor, scientists, professor from Western and other places. So we need, good rooms, and classrooms, and meditation rooms, so on. So that center is very important to this worldwide people, global people. I think it's very important center.
So, Morika, would you tell us, do you know what kind of sciences the monks, so the monks would travel from the monastery in South India to Atlanta to go to Emory and learn, stay there for what, 2 years, study science, and then go back to India and teach. Is that right?
Yeah. So, again, Geshe Lharampa started this program at the wish of His Holiness the Dalai Lama called the Emory-Tibet Science Initiative. And the goal is to slowly make certain fields of science part of the monastic curriculum. So unfortunately, but also fortunately for the young monks, mm-hmm. they have more to learn and more to study now than ever. But His Holiness really felt, I think, like it was very important for young monks and, monks coming up now to have an experience and have some knowledge of the modern sciences. And so I think the fields that His Holiness is most interested in are neuroscience and physics, and particularly quantum physics. Mm-hmm. And he has the Mind Life Institute, of course, and there are researchers in all kinds of disciplines, kind of bridging these things. Of course, he's written a book about the relationship between Buddhist philosophy and science called The Universe Within a Single Atom. So His Holiness has always been really interested in science, and so that slowly getting incorporated. And so Geshe Lharampa and Negila started the Emory-Tibet Science Initiative to support His Holiness's vision. So part of that program meant that 6 monastics would visit to Emory. The first group was there for 3 years, and then the next 3 groups have been there for 2 years each. So, and then as part of that, a group of Tibetan translators from India and from America, and including those monastics actually studying science at Emory, would meet to start translating and creating textbooks in Tibetan, and also, as I understand it, in a more traditional learning style, which includes debate, which Geshe Damchoe mentioned earlier in our conversation. So that's kind of been one piece where monastics, specifically selected for their skill or their knowledge, they would visit Emory and work on the textbooks. But then each summer, professors from America or sometimes from Europe would visit the 3 main monasteries that Geshe-la mentioned, Drepung Loseling and Sera, and they would teach a larger cohort of monks and nuns different sciences. So I think in total, I know they take the philosophy of science, biology, physics, and neuroscience. I think that's all of the classes. I know at Emory they also take, or a lot of them take, chemistry and math, but they also can take other courses as well, anthropology or environmental science or things like that. So there's a small bit more flexibility at Emory, but yeah, then I think the first cohort at the monastery at Drepung just graduated last year. They finished all of their coursework from something like 4 or 6 years. Geshe Damchoe probably knows more, but now my understanding is that the program is transitioning to more of a self-taught situation. So now the Western professors are playing a more supportive role, and it's actually the Tibetan monastics themselves who are doing the teaching, doing the curriculum building. So they're kind of shifting into the next phase of that strategy, I guess. So I think, now the timing seems to have been good.
Right.
But fewer Western professors are now regularly going over to the monasteries to teach the monastics, because now there are enough monks and nuns who have gone through the program in India and also in America that they're kind of doing more of the day-to-day teaching. And there are also Tibetans who are not monastics who are part of this program that help teach and run the programs as well.
Geshe-la, are you still there?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I kind of glossed over in the beginning how you wound up at the monastery. And Morika, thank you for explaining all that. I'm just blown away by the fact that they're doing this, and really happy because I graduated with a degree in psychology, but I had a concentration in neuroscience, and so that's kind of near and dear to my heart. But Geshe Damchoe, you and I are around the same age, and that wasn't being taught right when you first arrived at the monastery in the 1980s. So would you tell us just briefly how you wound up there, because you were born in Tibet?
Yes. Yeah.
So how did you wind up? You were born in Tibet, you have brothers and sisters, mother and father. How did you wind up then living for really the rest of your days in a monastery in South India?
Yeah, I was born in the Kham region in East Tibet. There's a small village. So then I grew up in that my small village until I was 12. My age was 12. Mm-hmm. Around that, my parents, they got divorced. Then my dad, I brought in Lhasa, he went to Lhasa. So he brought me in Lhasa. Then I stayed there for until 12 to 16. Yeah, for a few years, just I stayed in Lhasa with my dad. Then one day I went to, my age was 16, I went to Gandhem Monastery, funded by Lama Tsongkhapa, as I mentioned before.
Right.
It's a whole Gelugpa's, whole Gelugpa separate from Gandhem Monastery.
Wait, what do you mean? It separate from, you mean?
Separate.
Separate, okay.
Came from Gandhem Monastery. Main monastery, Gelugpa's main monastery is Gandhem Monastery.
Okay.
Because founder was Lama Tsongkhapa,
Yes.
Lama Tsongkhapa. So that's Gelugpa founder was Lama Tsongkhapa. That's why we called Gandhem is main monastery of Gelugpa tradition.
Okay.
One day I went there. It is from Lhasa to there. I think it takes for 2 hours from Lhasa to Gandhem Monastery by or taxi or buses. Distance it's from Lhasa to there. It is located on the top of a mountain.
The top of a mountain.
So one day I went there to see Gandhem Monastery. I saw some peaceful monks, Then I got feel like if I could to be a monk, it would be wonderful for my life. Something I don't know. I don't have any other much reason to be a monk. Then my dad was with me at that time. So then asked to him. Then he accepted to be a monk. Then he brought me higher Rinpoche. Then I took, first ordination from him. Then I stayed in Gandhi Monastery. Since that, for 1 year, I think.
1 year, okay.
Yep. Then next year, my age was 17. Then at that time, Chinese, some officer, they put in the Gandhi Monastery. They were judging, they will control other monks, like as me, who came from outside of Lhasa, like from Amdo. It is east border of a Chinese, state.
Yes.
Then also Kham region. So there are so many monks come from different places to Gandhi Monastery. So they had a suspicion, to be increasing many monks in Gandhi Monastery.
Okay.
They didn't like,
right.
That situation. Then they announcement to us, eventually you should go back at your own village. It is better. It could be they're going to, control, they're going to make a limited monk.
They're going to limit the number of monks.
Limited number of monks, maybe 200 monks. They're going to give a opportunity to be monk around Lhasa, from around Lhasa, nearby Lhasa, not from far away, like a far place like Kham and Amdo. Okay. Amdo, you have to go back your own place. They mentioned many times. Then one day I got some information from India. Before I didn't know about that. Mm-hmm. Dalai Lama, his own Dalai Lama was in India, and there are many Geshes, Rinpoches, monks, many monks in India. They were preserving Tibetan Buddhist philosophy, culture, tradition, so on. So some monks, they went to around 1982. 1982, they went to India. Yeah, they reached, successfully they reached in India. We had some information. I saw some pictures of monks, who reached to India. Mm-hmm. Then eventually I realized that, maybe I could go in India,
Right.
Then yeah. I preferred to leave Tibet. I discussed with another my friend, very close my friend. We were memorizing some commentary on the top of roof of my room. Then we discussed. Then he agreed with me. Oh, that's it was very wonderful. Your opening is wonderful. So we should go. He agreed with me. Then one day we went. We would like to. We would make a divination. Divination from our abbot. There is a very senior abbot. Also, he has been a monk before 1959. Mm-hmm. In Gandhi Monastery. Then next day, we went to make a divination from him. Then he checked, traditionally. He mentioned to me, "Oh, you should go in India. It will be wonderful for your life." My friend, if you leave Tibet on the way, it wasn't good for you. You will get some problem, or there's some there were some obstacles,
Okay.
to reach in India. So I can't decide to leave. Then we came back at the room. Then he couldn't come with me.
Your friend, he couldn't go with you.
Yeah. His mind has been changed.
Okay.
To come with me. Then at that time, I had few days after. I was very lucky. Now I can remember those things. I was very lucky at that time. I had another some monk. They were preparing to leave. India. So then eventually I could contact to them.
You contacted them, yeah.
Yeah. Before I didn't know, very well each other. So I think maybe I saw those monks, but we didn't talk anything before preparing for our to leave. So then anyway, I got very good companies, 4 monks. Yeah. Then I decided to leave India. It was I think it was around July 15, 2018. Then it took on the way about more than 3 months. We arrived in Kathmandu in Nepal about October 20, I think.
Wait, this wasn't 2018. No, that couldn't have been.
Yeah, it was 1983.
1983, okay.
Yeah, 1983, about when we leave, about July 15,
Right.
I can't tell you exact day. About July 15,
okay.
When we arrived in Kathmandu in Nepal, about at October 20, I think,
So you traveled for months. How?
About 3 months.
How?
Most of the time we walked.
You walked?
We walked, yeah. So after, even we didn't have any tents, it was summertime, we didn't have any tent. So then after a few days, we made a temporary tent by some bed sheets. Each of monk, we had a bed sheet. So we used 4 bed sheets,
Were you in any danger were you doing something illegal were you escaping, or was this allowed?
Yeah, it was escaping.
It was
totally
escaping. Okay.
It was very dangerous, The Chinese police or army, if they knew to leave us, it was totally illegal. So we had a very scared fear, You're
scared, yeah. You could have been arrested, right?
To cutting by police and then putting in the jail. It will be big trouble, So we had very fear or scared on the way. We told someone asked to us, where were you going? Mm-hmm. We had to tell, we are going to see Mount Kailash.
Yes.
Mount Kailash was, from Mount Kailash to border, it's quite near, it's quite near. So we mentioned to every people, we would like to see sacred mountain of Mount Kailash,
Okay, that was your story.
Many people, they go to, see the Mount Kailash. It's very often. Then it's good. It's good. Yeah,
lots of pilgrims.
Yes. So then on the way we ate only tsamba with the black tea. We
Tsampa
didn't have
is
any
barley, right?
Yeah, it's a barley flour.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a Tibetan fast food, I think.
Tibetan fast food. Okay.
It's a very usual food,
Yeah.
very common food,
mm-hmm.
whole in Tibet. So we had only tsamba with the black tea. We didn't have any nutritional foods. So then day by day we were getting weaker. Then that was I scared. It's could be we sick,
Right.
It's if we sick it's very difficult to treat,
right.
on the way. But I was very lucky, I didn't sick on the way. Some my friends they got sickness problem on the way.
Mm-hmm.
Also we got some, whole of monks we got problem. We had to wait for him for a few days, like that. Then eventually we we finished tsamba. We didn't have any tsamba,
You were out of food.
Yeah. So then we begged around Mount Kailash. When we reached Mount Kailash,
mm-hmm.
it's nearby Mount Kailash. Then we didn't have any food, even tsamba we didn't have. So then we begged, tsamba and black tea, some butters, dry cheese, we saw some nomad family,
Some nomads.
Nomads family. Some they are nearby around Mount Kailash. It was my first begging.
They shared their food with you.
Yeah, they shared. Yeah, they also they were quite poor. They didn't have much tsamba.
Yeah.
They gave to us tsamba with small spoon. Small spoon.
Oh.
Also sometimes we had to cross quite big river. Some rivers are quite big.
Mm-hmm.
So we crossed those rivers. It was very dangerous for me.
How did you manage to do that with no equipment?
I didn't know swimming.
You didn't know how to swim.
So it was very dangerous for me. But I was youngest, of our group. So I don't know. I didn't know other monks, my companions, they could swim or not.
Whether or not they could swim, you didn't know.
Yeah. Then we joined one by one hand, hand.
Yeah.
We joined each other or hand. Then we, crossed.
You crossed
slowly.
That
We
way.
crossed.
Wow.
Yeah, that way. Other side. Yeah, it was very scary to me.
Very scary. So eventually you made it. You wound up in India.
Yeah, then I reached in October. We reached in Kathmandu in Nepal. We stayed there for 3 months in Nepal. Then Tibetan exile government, there's a small office to taking care of new refugee come from Tibet,
mm-hmm.
in Tibet. So they sent us different monastery in Nepal. We stayed. I stayed at the small monastery. It was part of Drepung branch monastery. So they sent me that monastery. Then eventually, when I came to India, then automatically I attended in Drepung Monastery. Actually, I would attend to Gandhi Monastery because originally I was from Gandhi Monastery, right?
Right.
So it has been changed, my ambition. Yeah, that's my story.
So how did you decide to go to Loseling instead of Ganden?
Yeah, I mentioned before. Yeah, when I was during my stay in Kathmandu, officer they told us, now you couldn't go in India to see Dalai Lama, His Holiness Dalai Lama, because in the winter time, His Holiness going to visit in Bodhgaya. It's nearby from Kathmandu. Bodhgaya is nearby Kathmandu. So he going to give some teachings in Bodhgaya. Then it will be in December. So then they going to send you in December to see His Holiness Dalai Lama in Bodhgaya. After that, you can go whatever you wish to join different monasteries. They made a plan to us,
Right.
Then we followed that plan. So I stayed for 3 months in Kathmandu. There is a small Loseling branch monastery.
Right.
Also, I got a temporary teacher, a senior monk from Loseling Monastery.
Okay.
Then he sent to me, in Drepung Loseling Monastery.
So you wound up there with him, and you've mentioned His Holiness's Kalachakra teaching in Bodhgaya, and he does that every year, right?
Not every year, but it is very often,
And Morika, you attended one of those, is that right?
No, actually, I have not been to a Kalachakra teaching, but
were you
I've
in
been to
Bodhgaya?
Bodhgaya. I visited Bodhgaya, but just at a random time, not during a teaching.
So what is that? That is a holy place, is that right?
Yeah, Buddha, Gautam Buddha, that place is Gautam Buddha when he first attempt enlightenment.
He first obtained enlightenment there.
Enlightenment in there. There is we called Bodhi.
The Bodhi tree.
Bodhi, and he obtained enlightenment under of Bodhi tree. That's Bodhi tree is very sacred tree. We believe all of Buddhist. We believe that very most sacred things that tree. There is a stupa. Indian traditionally there's a big stupa. That stupa is very, very important whole entire Buddhist. So earlier time His Holiness gives many teaching. He gave many teaching in Bodhgaya, every winter he visited in Bodhgaya. He gave many teachings. He gave, I think he has been giving Kalachakra initiation more than 35 times.
And
different places.
Different
places.
Okay.
Including in Washington, D.C. In 2011.
Right. That's right.
I went there.
Yes, when you were here in the U.S., you went there, and that is a
Yes.
quite an advanced teaching, the Kala Chakra
Yes.
teaching. Is that right? And then there is an initiation at the end.
Yes.
And Morika, what did you see when you were in Bodhgaya?
Well, Bodhgaya is in the state of Bihar, which is one of the poorest states of India. So there's a lot of juxtaposition there. You know, it's
Right.
it's a very sacred place for Buddhists, and so you have the main stupa there, the Bodhi stupa, that is just, you know, an incredible place, and it's very peaceful. And you also have a lot of different temples from different lineages, not only within Tibetan Buddhism, but all kinds of Buddhism, because of course the Buddha's enlightenment place is sacred to all Buddhists, and so it's very sacred. And there's so much beauty there, but there's also, you know, a lot of really severe poverty and suffering, and so it makes you really reflect on even that kind of initial realization of the Buddha himself, the four sites that kind of set him on his path to enlightenment. You can still see them in Bodhgaya pretty easily, and so it's kind of this interesting and very raw place.
Mm-hmm. And would you tell us a little bit more about your time in India and what you did there?
Sure. Yeah, I as you now know, I had a long-standing interest in India, but particularly in the Tibetan culture, and I wanted to visit the monasteries, and particularly Drepung Loseling, and I was just very interested in Tibetan culture, and so that was one of the reasons I went to Emory originally. So I went on this spring study abroad program there in 2015, first of all. And so I spent my first months in India in the north, mostly in Himachal Pradesh, which is where Dharamsala is. And I was able to both live the way that spring program was organized was we sort of lived on the Sara campus for a month, and we had Tibetan roommates, and then we moved up to McLeod-Ganj, which is where His Holiness the Dalai Lama lives, and we were able to stay with homestay families, Tibetan homestay families, and then have a month of just having our American roommates. And during those 3 months, we studied language and culture and Buddhist philosophy. And then for the last month or so, we were able to do an independent research project as part of the program. And so I elected to visit Ladakh and do a project there. Ladakh is in the northernmost part of India, and we've all probably heard about it most recently as the place of the border disputes happening between India and China. But it is traditionally a Tibetan Buddhist culture, or primarily Tibetan Buddhist, but also Muslim, and very heavily influenced by Tibetan culture, although not exactly the same. The language is, according to many, a dialect of Tibetan, and they use the same script. And so, yeah, as people say in India, it's kind of same but different.
Okay.
So I was able to go there, and of course, my primary academic interest was environmental science and ecology, and so I was hoping to start trying to blend those. And so I found an organization in Leh, which is the capital of Ladakh, called the Snow Leopard Conservancy India Trust. And I was able to volunteer with them and learn about their mission, which is community conservation, not just of snow leopards, but snow leopard ecosystems and sort of the cultural relationships that Ladakis have with wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
And so that had a profound impact on me, and Ladakh is a very special place, and so I fell in love with it pretty quickly. And I developed close relationships with the people working in this organization, and so I was able to make connections that I could return to in future years. I also, that was the first year that I did do a trip down to South India and visited the big Gelugpa monasteries at that point, including Drepung. So that was very special, of course, because I was able to reunite with many monks that I had met through the years of my childhood in Santa Fe. And so that was a really special time. And
I would just like to jump in there a little bit. Because like I said, the groups of monks that come to the United States from Drepung Loseling Monastery, they change. They can't stay here for very long. It used to be 2 years. Now it's 1 year. So over the course of many years, we get to meet a lot of different monks because they're always changing. So I'm sure that must have been really exciting for you to reunite with a lot of them. I keep in touch with some of them still on Facebook, and I started sponsoring a young monk in 2010, and we have a relationship to this day. We stay in touch. It's 10 years later, and he's grown, and he's in his 20s now. And it's a wonderful program. Anybody can sponsor a monk, and I'll have links to that in the show notes. You can correspond with them and contribute to the Loseling Educational Fund that way. So you visited Loseling and also the other monasteries there. And I just want to say that there is a big Tibetan population living in that area, which is Mungad, right? When I say South India, it's the Karnataka state.
Mm-hmm.
And
Karnataka basically donated land to the Tibetan community, and India in general did, but Karnataka state was the most generous. So the biggest Tibetan communities are there in Mungad, where Drepung is, and actually the largest community is in Gelugpa, where Sara Monastery is, or Sera Monastery.
Yep. Right.
Sara is in North India. Sera is in South India.
Yes. Yeah.
So Geshe-la, just to finish up on your journey, you wound up at Drepung Loseling Monastery, and there is a school there as well. And so that's where you stayed and lived and went to school, and eventually, like we talked about earlier, graduated with your Geshe Lharampa degree, and you're still there today as a teacher, right? So you have students that you teach.
Yes, since my graduation of Geshe Lharampa, it was 2001. Since that, I has been staying continuously in this monastery to teach, philosophy, some other new monks, So it has been about for 20 years. I have been teaching many different types of Buddhist philosophy. Also, I share some modern science, modern science, and whatever I got different experience from my friend who lives in different places like America, South Korea, and Europe, so on. So, yeah, I have been sharing those things with other monks. So still I'm, I feel like still I'm a student, I had to learn so many things, including modern science and different cultures, and including English language.
Yes.
As you know, I learned from you.
Well, we learn from each other, and it's just been wonderful to stay in touch and keep in touch and share. Everybody's sharing with one another things that we know, and I love that so much. But when I met you in 2011, we started speaking right away. I was just amazed at how well you spoke. And Morika, you said that what you learned in Ladakh had really affected you. And I wanted to, before we finish today, for you to tell us about what you do today in Santa Fe and what you do in regards to ecology and conservation.
Yeah. Well, these days I'm the program coordinator for Santa Fe Watershed Association. So I'm kind of exploring more urban environmental issues. The Santa Fe River is primarily, it's a pretty small river, and it's a lot of it runs through the city of Santa Fe. And so it's been really interesting for me to explore more urban issues related to ecology and conservation. But I think there are still a lot of parallels. I think a lot of environmental problems kind of come down to people's relationship with the land and people's relationships with each other. So I guess in that way, in sort of an abstract way, you know, the things that I have been exposed to through Tibetan Buddhism continue to be helpful tools for me. And of course, there's a Tibetan community here in Santa Fe that I try to be connected to as much as possible. And but I think after doing research and spending time in India, I went back to India multiple other times after 2015, and which was great. But it's also nice to be back in my hometown of Santa Fe and really try to play kind of a role of an outsider insider. I think that being in India and having relationships, as you and Geshe-la have both said, with many kinds of people from all over the world with different perspectives and experiences has helped me have more of a novel perspective towards my own hometown community. And so it's exciting for me to be able to work on local issues here now and really dig into kind of more rooted ways of managing our natural resources and our community. So I work on various projects with this organization. It's just a small nonprofit, but it's been a great way to get to learn about my hometown in a different way, and my local landscape and ecology. So it's been good.
Yeah, there is a large Tibetan population in Santa Fe, and that's how I first got interested in Tibetan Buddhism, is because I've been visiting Santa Fe regularly since 1996. And then I also want to mention the films 7 Years in Tibet, starring Brad Pitt, and that came out in 1997, in addition to another film that came out the same year called Kundun, about the life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, that was directed by Martin Scorsese. And it was written by Melissa Matheson, who is no longer with us, but she also wrote the screenplay for the movie E.T., and she was married to Harrison Ford. So those two movies, 7 Years in Tibet and Kundun, had a huge effect on me. And then visiting Santa Fe, and there is a shop on Canyon Road called Project Tibet. It's actually more than just a shop. It's a piece of land there, and they have actually 3 little shops, and just visiting there and spending time in there and talking to the people that work there and buying incense and clothing and cards and things like that. And then stumbling really upon the monks that they're there every year. And I want to thank Ira and Sylvia Serrett for sponsoring their visit every year. If it wasn't for them, I don't know that I would have been able to kind of, like I said, stumble upon them. It was merely by chance. I saw a flyer in a window. I was there for a long weekend in 2010 in December, and I saw this flyer about a sand mandala being made and chanting, and I went to visit there at Serrett and Sons. They're in downtown Santa Fe. I call it downtown. It's probably not really called that. It's the historic district there. And I met Gala Rinpoche and a bunch of other monks, and that's how I started sponsoring a monk. And then eventually I saw that that tour was traveling throughout the United States and has come through Chicago a couple of times. And I've had the entire group stay with me in my home. And it's been a wonderful relationship. I've seen them in Atlanta and Dallas and lots of other places. So I want to thank everybody involved, your mom, Teresa Vorenberg, Marsha Keegan, the Serretts, and I want to encourage everybody, please, to check out the links that I'll be including in the show notes for this episode. And before we wrap up today, is there anything else either of you would like to add that we haven't already touched on?
Yeah, so I feel like another one feeling now I got certainly like also Santa Fe is special place for me because during my tour I stayed there sometime for 1 month,
Yes.
In Santa Fe. I feel it's a peaceful place, there's not much developing very big building like New York City and other places. It's it looks like a Tibetan village in Tibet, my own village is similar houses, people, they're not much busy, they're going slowly, peacefully, someday, maybe they don't have any jobs, they're just going around, slowly talking. Yep. It's similar like Tibetan tradition. So it is very interested for me to stay there. There is a monk's house, our family's old house, we called monk's house, as Morika knows. When I was there, she when she was free, Morika was free, then always she came to visit. She came to visit us. We at that time I couldn't talk much, in English. My English was quite poor at that time. Even she came to meet me. Then sometime I went to outside. Then she drove for me.
She drove for you.
Yeah, she took me everywhere, different places, whatever I want to go. Yeah. So our family and Marshall, she's not with us, unfortunately. Anyway, and Morika's, and her mom, also I'm very grateful to her mom. When I one day I was very sick with my digestion. Then
your digestion.
Digestion problem I got. So Teresa came to me. She took me there's a small hospital in that Santa Fe. I think that doctor had private doctor. I think, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. A chiropractor.
Yeah, chiropractor. I think. So she paid, for me everything.
She took care of you.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't pay nothing. Even $1 I didn't pay. So then eventually I was okay. I was normal. Then so yeah. Also, we went many times. Morika's home,
Mm-hmm.
they invited us during World Cup game,
The World Cup,
Then
to watch the World Cup, yeah.
Yeah, to watch the World Cup game. So they prepared a big lunch for us, all of monks. So yeah, we have been very enjoyed it with many different families in Santa Fe.
Mm-hmm.
So Santa Fe is very close to me. Also, Chicago, I went there many times, so you invited my group at your home. You prepared a very big lunch for us.
Yes, that was fun.
We chanted, small, short chanted for your host blessing.
Yes.
Wonderful, people. So I can remember those things very clearly.
Great memories.
Yeah, I'm making a little emotionally,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a wonderful connection we all have.
Yes.
Morika, do you have any closing thoughts?
Just to say thank you, and thanks for including me today, and thank you, of course, to Geshe Damchoe for everything he gives to the world, and also for my own life. I'm really grateful for the impact that the Drepung monks have had on my life, and it's hard to imagine what I would be doing if I hadn't met the monks so long ago. So I'm grateful for that, and I think especially during these kind of unimaginable times, I feel so grateful to have been exposed to Tibetan Buddhism. I don't consider myself a Buddhist, but there are so many tools that I feel so grateful to have that people like Geshe Damchoe have shared with me so generously, and so I'm very grateful for that.
That's wonderful. And one last thing I would like to add, since the tour is on lockdown like the rest of us, what they're doing is a live stream every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I will provide a link to that in the show notes, but if you go to drepung.org, you could probably find it there. They're doing a Medicine Buddha Puja, which is a prayer chanting, and you can watch them live on the internet and kind of just sit and meditate with them and hear the chanting and absorb the energy. And there is so much that we haven't covered that there is to learn. Again, there will be links in the show notes to where you can learn more about everything. So I want to thank you both so much for spending so much time with me here today, for sharing all of that with the listeners. And I'm going to wrap it up. Please visit the website Speaking of Jung, that's JUNG.com, for more information on everything that was discussed in this episode. There you will also find all of the previous episodes of this podcast, which are available to stream or to download for free. This podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. And it will be available later in the week on our YouTube channel. You can also listen to this episode on your Amazon Echo device simply by saying, "Alexa, play Speaking of Jung" on Apple Podcasts or TuneIn. Just be sure to pronounce Jung with a hard J and pronounce. With special thanks to Gala Rinpoche, Teresa Vorenberg, Marsha Keegan, Harmon Hupton, Ira and Sylvia Serrett, and to Mary Charlotte at the Santa Fe Radio Cafe. This is Laura London, and you've been listening to a special quarantine edition of Speaking of Jung.